At this moment of great uncertainty and disruption in the world, we have to ask what's going on and why it's happening. Carol mentioned Jeffrey Sachs and his speech at the UN Security Council. I think he hit the nail on the head when he said what happened on January the 3rd was not just an attack on Venezuela, but an attack on international law itself. We've seen lawlessness before, he said, but not with nuclear weapons. Some people see the problem in terms of Trump's personality, but we won't understand anything unless we see the context, the decline of the US and the rise of China. Trump's focus on the Western Hemisphere represents a calculated strategy directed against China, aiming to sever links between China and Latin America so as to split the BRICS and fragment the global South, which is the driving force in the multipolar challenge to US dominance. In the Arctic, it aims to create a new zone of conflict to prevent any new links between Europe and China. If we simply see the world in terms of regions, we don't see the whole, the interconnections. For Biden, the Ukraine war was not just about Russia. Defeat was all the more necessary since the Russian victory would embolden China. Back in 2021, Biden named China as America's most consequential geopolitical challenge in the longer term. The US then had to muster its capabilities to outcompete China, especially in the emerging technologies which are transforming warfare: cyber, space, AI, quantum computing. The next 10 years, Biden said at the time, would be decisive. But now, halfway through that decade, China has emerged as a leading power in technologies for the future: EVs, batteries, solar panels, 5G, AI. The pace of change is amazing. I visited 5 major cities in China last year, and nearly every other car number plate was a green one. As for Biden's alliance building, only 40 countries joined his Ukraine coalition. The global South kept out, as Kate mentioned, drawing closer to China. But when Biden called for decoupling from China, the Europeans just shuffled their feet, muttering about de-risking instead. The technological competition with China is hugely costly. The demands of the Magnificent Seven tech companies plus the huge US military budget. Biden was too slow, so now we have Trump in gangster mode. Give me the money or I'll hit you with tariffs like you've never seen. And if you don't, well, see what I did to Venezuela, see what I did to Iran. So money is pouring in, investment, arms purchases from Europe, the UK, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and so on, all to uphold the US and its arms manufacturers. This is the foreign policy of the military-industrial complex. Trump seeks to consolidate the US power base in the Western Hemisphere, secure supply chains, acquire critical minerals, gain control over shipping lanes, ready for a future war. I suggest he doesn't need NATO. The AUKUS Track 2 provides a much more flexible model, building collaboration across borders and with the private sector, wrapping other economies around the world into the US cutting-edge military technologies in those critical areas identified by Biden. Now, in the Asia-Pacific region, tensions between the world's number 2 and number 3 economic powers has escalated alarmingly, threatening the wider world economy. The UK has been deepening its military links with Japan. We worry about the rise of the far right over here, but in Japan, a new ultra-conservative prime minister has been installed. She wants to revise Article 9, the peace clause. She wants to review the 3 non-nuclear principles. And it's no secret that Japan, with its large stockpiles, could build a nuclear weapon almost overnight. And she's sharply increasing the risk of war with China over Taiwan. And China indeed has reasons to fear this revival of Japanese militarism, having lost 30 million people when it fought Japan's aggression between 1931 and 1945. The new Prime Minister has been a frequent visitor to the Yasukuni Shrine, which honours Japan's war dead, including convicted Class A war criminals. She shares then in the politics of the extreme right who deny Japan's wartime atrocities and who glorify Bushido, Japan's warrior spirit, in order to make Japan strong again. AUKUS, meanwhile, is going ahead since the UK has committed to build 12 nuclear power submarines. I don't recall that ever being discussed. While South Korea is to manufacture more in the US, quite possibly in contravention of the NPT. In future, then, will Japan and South Korea join AUKUS? Will we even see a nuclear-armed Japan, as well as a Korean peninsula nuclear-armed on both sides of the border? This is the direction of travel if nothing is done to stop it. Meanwhile, Trump has also made Taiwan a priority, turning the island into a powder keg as it stuffs it with unmanned drones, HIMARS, ATACMS missiles to strike deep into Chinese territory. And with the US failing to adopt no first use, failing to reduce the number of nuclear warheads from 6,000, and instead sighting intermediate missiles around China, that country has significantly increased its nuclear arsenal from 300 to 600 warheads over the last few years, whilst maintaining its no first use stance. The US hawks have been saying there'll be a war with China by 2027. And now it seems there may be a war with Europe even sooner. But if people think there's going to be a war, what are they doing to avoid it? The hype about a Chinese threat is nonsense. China hasn't fought a war for 45 years, and the number of Chinese warships prowling around Greenland, or the world beyond its own coastline for that matter, is zero. If China is setting the pace in technological development, we should be spending more money on education so as to prepare for the future, instead of piling munitions into warehouses, which is no use at all. Europe, now threatened itself, seems to have discovered the meaning of sovereignty, not for Venezuela or for Iran or for the Palestinians, of course. The hypocrisy is so blatant and they know it. Cracks are starting to appear in the West's solidity. Carney's speech, for all its limitations, marked a certain recognition that the hypocrisy must end, the world has changed and has become more multipolar, and it's necessary to adapt. Some Labour MPs are calling for a foreign policy based on international law and the UN Charter. So, as the Chinese say, in every crisis, there is an opportunity. The world needs a new way of thinking about security, and maybe, just maybe, there is space opening up for us to promote more creative thinking here. A mass-based peace and anti-war movement is beginning to take off. It may be very fragmented, but the opportunity to forefront the nuclear issue and our ideas on common and human security is growing. Thank you.